One. Good morning, everyone. I will propose just to have more 5 minutes in order to allow some delayed people entering, and then we will start at 12 for those in Central European time and 11 for those in Portugal and eventually other countries with the same time.
So how was the first day?
Yeah, sorry?
How was the first day?
Yeah, I think the first day was quite people were participating a lot, so it was kind of interesting. We had several, just like today, we had several sessions going on at the same time, but they will have a significant number of participants. And so from what I say, I have not been able to go through it yet, but we have some interesting conclusions that, of course, are the most expected outcome of this initiative. And so we are quite enthusiastic about the day yesterday and, of course, the days to come, with such different things taking place every day. So it was quite good, even though it was Monday, and Mondays are always more difficult, but it was quite interesting.
Right. Yeah. And the technique worked well.
Yeah, yeah,
No, that's good.
yes. You know that for us it was kind of sad, let us say, to having to do this mostly online. But on the other hand, perhaps we can reach people that are in different places in different European countries, and perhaps it would be more difficult for them to come all to this conference. So yes, we have this thing about being at home and with the computers all the time and meetings online all the time. That is really, I think all of us are now quite tired. But on the other side, it really enables communication throughout Europe in a very intense way. Perhaps it's a kind of a digital revolution second or third round because we are doing
No.
yes, we are doing such a lot of things, and we are talking with so many people that, well, I don't know how you feel it, but in my case, every afternoon I feel, oh my God, I've talked to so many people about such different topics, and it really is due to this situation also. So it's interesting to
It
say.
is.
Yes, it's interesting. Well, we just I will give just 1 minute more, and then we will start. Okay, then let us formally start this session. First of all, let me welcome everyone in this room. I'm Elsa Ferreira Nunes. I'm Irradiar CEO. My job today is mainly to facilitate the talk, and so I won't take that long presenting me. So, and I will pass on to presenting our guests. First of all, let me apologize for any misspelling of the names, because as you know, this is always something difficult. I will start with Maria Zavakidis. Sorry, Maria.
Perfect. That was perfect.
Okay, thank you so much.
No complaints.
Maria is the CEO of the EIT Urban Mobility, a European knowledge and innovation community that aims at accelerating the transition towards sustainable urban mobility and livable urban spaces. Before joining this European Institute for Innovation and Technology, Maria was in charge for innovation at Siemens for more than 20 years in different positions. She started her career as a researcher, also in this field of intelligent transport systems, and she holds also a PhD in traffic engineering from the Technical University of Munich. So I will present all the speakers and all the rapporteurs, and then I will be giving the floor. So I will proceed to Mrs. Carmen Carvalheira. Carmen Carvalheira is the Vice President of the CCDR Alentejo, which is the Regional Coordination and Development Commission for Alentejo region in Portugal, also the region hosting this initiative. Carmen Carvalheira holds a degree in civil engineering from University of Coimbra, one the eldest university in Portugal, and she also has a master's in urban engineering. As from March 2016, she held the position of councillor for the municipality of Montemoro Novo, also a municipality from Alentejo region. And now, as I was saying, Carmen is Vice President in Alentejo Regional Authority. Professor Pekka Leviakangas, also sorry for this misspelling, here with us, and my dearest colleague in our project. He is full professor of infrastructure and transport and lifelong nominated docent in industrial engineering and management at the University of Oulu. Pekka has a PhD both in technology and in economics, and is specialized in digitalization, mobility, and transport system analysis. Now I will present also our rapporteurs for this morning session, and I would like to introduce to Ashborn Ofsto. So sorry again for this spelling. Hello. Hello. Ashborn is has a master's in project administration at Henley Business School, and is more than 30 years experience in a European project, where his main interests are in intelligent transport systems, health, security and safety, biometrics, and wireless sensor technology, and smart grids and smart cities. He was work package leader of requirements in a very important and well-known H2020 project, which is Vicinity. And we will pass on now to also to Paula Hans. Is over 21 years experience in renewable energy. Sorry, I don't see if, oh yes, you are online now sorry. So Paul combines his position as project director for Aiguasol, which is an international energy and consulting company, and he is also an associate researcher and part-time lecturer in Technical University of Catalonia, which as its headquarters is based in Barcelona. So we have our both our speakers and our rapporteurs introduced. And so I will now start giving the floor to Maria. Maria.
Thank you very much, Elsa, for the kind introduction. So I think I need to share my screen, right? So,
yes, Maria, please.
So let me see whether this works.
Okay, we can see it now.
It does, okay. So let me make it bigger even. So put it on slideshow. Can you see that now? So can you tell me what you see? Do you see the full screen? All good?
Now we have already seen the full screen. Now we are seeing screen notes. So I think you should go for the previous position. Yes, perfect, Maria. Yes, perfect.
Okay, so thanks a lot for inviting me. This is a bit unusual because EIT Urban Mobility is, of course, about urban mobility. So I'm not used to speaking at events or discussing with people from regions, although this is becoming more and more usual because, of course, regions are very important in connecting with the cities, and much of the transport happening in urban areas is actually from and to the metropolitan regions, the suburbs, or even between municipalities. So I don't feel out of place here. So maybe just to explain to you a little bit about EIT Urban Mobility. So EIT is the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. It is a body of the European Union, and it was created back in 2008 to strengthen Europe's ability to innovate. It has been an integral part of Horizon 2020 and now of Horizon Europe, which is the European Union's framework program for research and innovation. So the Commission created the EIT to foster mainly entrepreneurship and innovation to solve the big societal challenges. And the main motivation is to bridge the gap between research and the market, and to support new solutions to come to the market fast, and support students to become entrepreneurs and startups to become more successful. So what do we do at EIT Urban Mobility? So EIT Urban Mobility is one of 8 knowledge and innovation communities of the EIT, so which are all public-private partnerships and all independent entities. And we launched EIT Urban Mobility only in 2019, so we are still very young. And we have the mission, as Elsa already introduced, to accelerate the change towards sustainable urban mobility and livable urban spaces. So what is unique about our partnership? So we bring together cities, citizens, businesses, from big corporations to SMEs and startups, knowledge institutes and research organizations. So we're bringing together all stakeholders of the ecosystem. And our community runs activities in 3 main areas. In education, so we have master school programs, for instance, but also run professional education. We run with the community innovation projects to pilot new solutions and to scale them to cities. And we are also very active in supporting startups to develop their businesses, find the right ecosystem partners, but also find investors. So these are the 3 main areas. And to touch ground and not be like a high-level European initiative, which produces things for the drawer, we closely collaborate and support the local innovation ecosystem. So we operate through a hub model. We currently run 5 innovation hubs in Barcelona, where also our headquarters is, in Munich, in Prague, in Helmond in the Netherlands, and Copenhagen. And we also have a growing number of smaller regional nodes, one of which is, by the way, in Portugal. So currently we have 230 active partners from more than 20 countries who are engaged in the different activities. So from education to innovation to business creation. We started out with 13 cities as our partners in 2019, and now we have 55 cities actually from 23 countries in activities in this year in 2021. And we do not only have big cities, but half of those 55 are actually smaller cities or towns with less than 250,000 inhabitants. But we also have really big cities. So 10 of our partner cities have more than 1 million inhabitants, including also a mega city, which is Istanbul. But also we are engaging with metropolitan regions. So, for instance, Barcelona, the metropole region of Strasbourg, and Toulouse. So, as said, our focus is on urban mobility because, of course, more than 70%, as you know, of the European Union's population live in urban areas and are impacted by the negative effects of transport. But also, we need to look at, how to make the traffic from the suburbs into the city centers and between the cities more sustainable. So transition to sustainable urban mobility is only possible if we're looking at those links. And so we need to look at small cities, medium-sized cities, villages, and how we connect the villages. So the goals for sustainable mobility are the same, whether we talk about big cities, small cities, or we talk about regions, and that is that we want green, safe, affordable, and mobility that is accessible for all. So this said, although the challenges and the specific solutions will be different, whether we're talking about mobility solution in a city or a region, many of the enablers and also the innovation areas that are relevant for urban mobility and that our community is working on are also relevant for mobility in regions. So I would like to highlight now some of those enablers and give some examples of innovative solutions that we see. So local public transport, that is a crucial link, of course, between suburban and rural areas and the urban centers. And public transport is ensuring that mobility in the countryside for everyone. It is the backbone and often the starting point or the end point of any multimodal trip in regions. So now the challenges for public transport in lower density areas, of course, include the higher distance of railroad stations from housing. We have shrinking populations, aging society. We have decentralized school locations and retail outlets, and all this leads to public transport service being heavily dependent on public subsidies. So it's not a good business case, if you will. So, and this situation has been very much aggravated now by COVID-19, of course, as you know. So as an example, in the first quarter of 2021, Deutsche Bahn regional in Germany, they still operated their full services and timetable, but the demand slumped to around 30 to 40% compared to pre-crisis levels. And post-COVID, what's expected is that level of commuting, of course, will go up again, but it's expected to not, go up to the levels pre-COVID, because we will see some permanent shift towards remote working that has been triggered due to the pandemic. So we will see changing commuting behaviors, and that will be a big challenge in terms of public transport ridership and how to maintain a good coverage and good level of service for all people living outside of the big agglomerations. So during the pandemic, what EIT Urban Mobility the EIT Urban Mobility community did was focus on solutions to regain users' trust. So, for example, we had one consortium who developed and tested a new disinfection formula, and that was then piloted in Barcelona in metro trains, and so that helped at least to show people that it's safe to ride on public transport again. And those new disinfectants, new hygiene concepts, these are certainly becoming a basic requirement, really, to regain trust of the people who had already been using public transport. And now we want to get them back onto public transport. But what we need is actually more than that. So we need to shift trips from private cars to public transport. And this will require more than, you know, this basic requirement of showing people it's safe to ride on public transport. It will require higher frequency and flexibility of service, more attractive pricing, as well as interoperability with other transport modes. And so this means bridging the first and the last mile to public transport with cycling, for instance, with e-scooters or electric vehicles of any kind. So how this looks like is demonstrated by cities like Copenhagen already, you know, for years. More than 50% of the population in Copenhagen commute to work fully by bicycle, but then also those who need to cover longer distances by train because they are coming from outside of the city by train, they can take their bikes with them in special bike racks, which you can see here on this picture. So a booster for better accessibility of regional public transport for all will be the availability of, or the better connection with other modes. And so I mentioned cycling, but more than that, it will be the availability of mobility as a service in low density areas, which we don't have right now. So shared mobility for all types of vehicles, that is expected to expand in the coming years. And the growth rates are expected to be at 20% per year until 2030. And if smartly combined with public transport, shared mobility can actually become more attractive than owning a car, especially for people, of course, living in the city centers where we have scarce space to put the cars, but also in areas currently underserved by public transport. Smart shared mobility solutions can complement public transport and give people who cannot afford to own a car or do not want to own a car access to better, to more affordable mobility, which is also demand responsive, because people will not have to wait for 40 minutes to get on the next bus. So shared mobility options in regions include solutions, now new solutions, such as car sharing, ride sharing, ride pooling, e-hitchhiking, you name it. So there are many variations of this pretty old concept of car sharing, but those concepts are now, and the services are now becoming really user-friendly and instantly accessible due to, of course, the great technologies we have, the mobile communication, the platform computing, and other fantastic technologies that have emerged. So just you know, 2 examples maybe on this. So on car sharing, that as said, so it's not a new concept, but now it can really take off with the electric vehicles and with digital technologies that allow digital authentication, mobile access, and mobile payment. And there's one example, for instance, of Hyundai. They run a service in Spain, or now piloting it in Spain, offering electric car sharing services to towns with less than 10,000 inhabitants. So really trying to go to the low density areas, and their aim is to cover 80 such communities by end of 2021. And from our own community, there is a startup called Sono Motors, whose mission is to scale electric peer-to-peer car sharing services in also in low density, underserved areas. And they build a car, which you can see in this picture, that is solar, electric, and made actually to be shared. And they are right now performing pilots with a fleet of these connected and shared vehicles, and they plan to start production in 2023. And there are many other examples of similar type of car or ride-sharing applications that are currently tested or piloted, and hopefully they will turn out to be successful in terms of a business case for providers as well, because only then that will motivate actually the scaling of shared mobility to more rural areas. A trend that has been also greatly accelerated by the pandemic is e-commerce. So global parcel volume is most likely to more than double by 2026, reaching 260 billion parcels by then. And managing these rapidly increasing parcel delivery volumes, that is a challenge. That is a challenge for urban areas, but most certainly also for more rural areas. And innovation in logistics is very important for more efficient and zero emission deliveries. This is, I would say, one of the main future challenge areas that also our community is looking at. And urban air mobility, which is shown in this picture with a drone, that will not be the solution to manage large volumes or bulky freight, but delivery drones can be part of the solution for specific use cases, such as for deliveries to remote areas. For example, the picture you see here, that is of a delivery drone of Correos, that is the postal service company in Spain. And they are piloting using drones for deliveries in hilly regions. So in parallel, that is also about urban air mobility overall. So it's not only the drone delivery of parcels, but there is a whole civil drone market that is booming. And the global market for production services and applications for urban air mobility, that is forecasted to double from 2019 to 2025. There are many reservations against urban air mobility. Is it safe? Who will be liable if something happens? Is it going to actually increase social injustice? And many other concerns. So what is needed is to facilitate the uptake of urban air mobility solutions for the beneficial use cases, because not all the use cases are actually socially viable and beneficial. So the more beneficial ones, like medical deliveries, deliveries to remote areas, and so on. So the main enablers for that are to engage the citizens, to educate citizens, but even more importantly, to create a coherent regulatory framework for drones and for air taxis, but also provide the right management systems that will ensure that limited airspace is used safely and efficiently. So one example that you see here in this slide is of a startup that we are supporting as well with EIT Urban Mobility, a German startup. They are creating an open digital traffic operating platform for automated and piloted air taxis and drones. So all stakeholders and suppliers, providers of urban air mobility services can actually use this platform and use the operation mechanisms provided through the platform. Another trend, also accelerated by the pandemic, that has been the uptake of electric vehicles. Sales of electric vehicles in Europe are expected to grow to 30% share of the private car market by 2030. And to cater to this growth with regards to charging, the European Commission estimated that by 2030, we will need 14 times as many publicly accessible EV charging points as there were in 2020. So a massive increase and ramp up of the charging infrastructure. In suburban or rural areas, the off-street parking space is not as scarce as in cities, of course, and people also drive longer distances, hence can actually substantially save on fuel costs by driving an electric vehicle. So it is a much better case for electric cars for people living in rural areas than in cities, where e-cars are an improvement, of course, compared to traditional cars, but not really saving the problem of space, and also posing a great challenge in terms of charging. Now, there are new smart home charging solutions that will help electric vehicle owners to maximize the economic value of their electric vehicles by optimizing when and how vehicles are charged to reduce cost and maximize also the use of clean energy when charging. One of our startups, again, is actually working in this area. It's a Spanish startup called Bial, and they help consumers actually optimize their charging sessions to reduce cost. And this is done by avoiding peak loads, by facilitating the integration of renewables, and also putting some incentives to charging with low carbon electricity. So a problem that those solutions, smarter home charging, will not solve is that of the still quite limited driving range of electric vehicles. So to further accelerate the uptake of e-mobility in regions, it is important to tackle the issue of seamless and fast charging during a trip. And one of the really exciting solutions that we've recently seen is that of Elon Road. It's a Swedish company. And what Elon Road offers is an inductive charging solution that roads can be retrofitted with. And it allows vehicles to charge while driving. So they drive over this charging track and are charged while driving. And this electric road concept that can complement the rollout of charging points and extend then, of course, the driving range and reduce the need for larger, more and more, bigger batteries. The solution it looks far away, but it is actually mature. It's being produced. It's currently being piloted in the Swedish city of Lund, and it could really be a step change for e-mobility if successful. And so thinking further into the future, this smart infrastructure could also be used for different types of applications. So not only the charging, but actually these rails are already smart, and they could be made more smart to support autonomous connected driving. So autonomous driving. So it is forecasted that by 2040, autonomous vehicles will account for about 70% of total passenger kilometers worldwide. So there are different forecasts. So there's a very wide range there. It's not doubted that it will happen, but actually when it will happen. So there's a very diverging range of predictions there. So it might still be 10 years away that autonomous vehicles would drive freely within cities. because, of course, urban traffic is very complex. But I believe that it will happen much earlier in rural areas. I think that in the next few years, we will already see the first autonomous vehicles, and I think the use case will be the distribution of goods. And automated and eventually then autonomous driving is, I think, a huge opportunity for rural areas. Robot taxis can serve even remote and rural areas, and at a low cost, and thereby substantially improving the business case for mobility as a service and demand responsive transport that I have talked about before. So this autonomous driving, this would alleviate also the need of people to own a car, because mobility as a service will be so much better and freely accessible to all, and it will be ubiquitous. So whenever it's needed, there will be instant availability. So the pace of vehicle automation, that will rely on fast deployment of the proper infrastructure and standards that to enable communication between vehicles and infrastructure, for instance, with the ramp up now of the 5G networks. Large investments in infrastructure are also required for cycling and walking. So this might not be what you call smart mobility, but for me, smart is whatever is creating the impact that we want. And cycling and active mobility overall, that is definitely an important element of the solution. COVID has triggered a rediscovery of active mobility. Now Europeans are expected to buy 30 million bikes per year by 2030, compared to 20 million in 2019. And e-bikes are expected to make up half of the 2030 sales. And e-bikes, of course, enable longer commutes between work and home, which opens a real opportunity for modal shift from car to cycling for commuting. In 2020, 1 billion euros has been spent on cycling infrastructure across Europe. So there has been an enormous ramp up of the cycling infrastructure, with more than 1,000 kilometers implemented only last year. For example, Ireland more than doubled the budget for cycling and walking infrastructure in 2021. And also Germany's transport ministry recently, they highlighted their objective to be a country, or become Germany to become a country of cycling commuters. So I can tell you we're not there yet, but at least so there is really the political will and the commitment to go in this direction. So to achieve this, we need above all the right infrastructure. For example, new super cycle highways between municipalities, which are needed to enable safe and unobstructed e-cycling at higher speeds. And for all these positive trends that I've showed you, the question is not if they will happen, but how to actually accelerate them. And COVID has made it so crystal clear that to come up with smart solutions to complex problems, for example, as COVID and finding a vaccine, to come up with such solutions fast, it requires really broad and intense collaboration of all stakeholders, public and private. However, what we still see, and we did recently a survey among our cities, is that very few cities actually involve or engage with startups when it comes to mobility, or other private companies. So cities mostly work with other public organizations, they work with universities, but there needs to be more cross fruition, so to speak, and cross collaboration of the public and the private sector. And also what surprised us was that half of the cities, only half of them, says they intensely involve citizens in mobility planning, which is actually not a high figure. So it should be much higher. So we are working to change that. by fostering collaboration of all stakeholders to first identify what are the real needs of the cities and the communities, what are the challenges that we need to address, and then bring all the stakeholders together to jointly develop solutions to address those needs. And then lastly, also to pool, of course, different sources of funding that is definitely needed to make progress faster towards new sustainable mobility solutions. So I hope that we will have the opportunity to engage and innovate with some of you in the coming years to drive the change in mobility together. Thank you, and I'm happy to, I don't know, take questions now or later. So over to you, Elsa.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for such a comprehensive presentation. In fact, some of your slides and some of your information showed us that the future is tomorrow is not only a cliche. So it's really happening, and it was quite amazing to watch some of the slides you presented us. I know that Maria asked for her questions to be performed right now, even though we thought of having the questions in the end. Maria is having some restrictions in her time with us. So please, if someone has questions, you can either address it directly or write it here in our dialogue panel. So please, we could take some questions now from the audience.
Can I make a question if nobody else is willing to?
Yes, please, go ahead, Pekka.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria, for an interesting presentation. I was just wondering that did you do any analysis at EIT or are you aware of such analysis that when we are having so many electric cars in the future, which is the likely future, then what happens to our grid, our energy grid? And do we still have the opportunity, for example, to optimize the charging and perhaps also feeding back to the grid when the number of vehicles starts to really, exponentially grow?
Yeah, so that is exactly, these are the challenges. So as you say, it's not a question whether it will happen. So we will have an enormous amount of e-vehicles, and now how to balance the grid and how to actually cater to the massive need for electricity. That is now what the community, and we also put out as a challenge of for the community to work on. And so I mentioned some of the startups that are working on such software-based applications that will help the users to actually choose the right time to load so as not to burden the grid. But then what you say is feeding the grid with the electricity from the batteries. That is definitely also one element of balancing the grid. So I think there's a huge challenges ahead, and I fully agree that the challenge is now how to balance the grid and to cater to the needs of this new demand.
Thank you so much, Maria. I think there is a question here. It says, okay, thank you for this presentation. Could you tell us more about the region's implication in the EIT urban mobility for the period 2021-2027? How can they be involved?
Yes, thank you for this question. So EIT has actually a dedicated program, which is Regional Innovation Scheme, to involve. So that is actually targeted at the regions with lower innovation levels or modest innovation levels, to support them to actually tap into the opportunities of our programs and get them connected also to to the partners that we already have. So, and EIT is now putting a focus for the coming 7 years. So in Horizon Europe, putting a focus on this regional innovation scheme, putting more funds also into projects and participation of those risk countries, we call them. So what we are doing is that we are building up new hubs. So we have now 7 hubs, and I mentioned Portugal, but we also have one in Serbia and in Malta and so on. And we are now, we will have 5 new hubs, regional hubs in this year. So we are trying to enlarge the community and bring in the regions into our ecosystem. Asa, you're muted.
Oh, yes, it's always happening this. Okay, thank you. We have here another question, and it says some more words about automation in low density rural areas. We are talking about electric mobility. Can you talk a little more about this?
About autonomous or
automation. I can repeat some more words about automation in low density rural areas. We are talking about electric mobility. Can you talk a little more about this? So I mean about electric mobility and about automation and how it can help mobility in low density rural areas. I believe this is the question.
I don't really know how to answer the question. I think, as said, I think that there is an opportunity for autonomous driving or automated driving to take off more or faster in urban contexts, because in the urban context it's just very, very complex. So I mean, how to support it, it would be, so if more rural, if the regions, for instance, participated in piloting or being a test lab for such already existing automated or autonomous driving solutions, for instance, for deliveries. I mean, we are seeing many pilots already happening in the States and so on, and we are a little bit behind in Europe. And I think if there were communities and regions actually embracing the technology and putting themselves forward to be test beds, that would be, accelerating the development substantially in Europe. I don't.
Maria, you have muted yourself.
Yes, you are on mute.
Oh, so was I on mute all the time now?
No, just a few words. We wouldn't do it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to tell you that at EIT Urban Mobility, so we're not putting this in the center. Autonomous driving is not in the center of our activities, our innovation projects, because we want to bring pretty mature solutions to the cities and to the markets fast. So, and I still see, some work that has to be done before we can actually test or pilot real autonomous driving in the real, free city context. So this might become something that we will be engaged in maybe 3 or 4 years from now. But I think for the regions, there is opportunity for real life applications already now.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We will take now one more question and then move to the next speaker. So I invite Sam Yeboah to make a question. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Sam, currently internal area there, and I have a question about the mobility as a service package. Do you think that it is more of the responsibility of the private or startup space to try and like come up with mobility packages which involve different public transportation services and private and shared mobility? Or do you think the agencies themselves have to start like communicating with each other to come up with packages in this manner?
Yeah, so that is a very important point here. So I think we will not make progress if the private side and the startups keep, bringing new offering new services to the market without actually having had a dialogue with the public sector, who needs to provide the framework for those startups to be successful. So we've seen it with micromobility. There has been a consolidation of the market because, of course, the market could not support so many different startups. We had the problem with the free-floating scooters with vandalism. We have the charging problem and so on. So it really needs the cities, the public, or also the regions, the municipalities to work together with the ones offering or wanting to offer such services to discuss how this can be done and how can they also be integrated into the larger platforms, which I think Sam, you have been proposing. And we see that cities actually take the lead in this more and more. So we have, for instance, in Berlin, we have Yelby, a platform that's integrating different mobility services. And only if they are integrated, they will become attractive for users. Because I'm not only using an e-scooter, I might use a bike that's shared. And I might need an e-car to drive longer distances. So, and I don't want to have 10 applications on my mobile with 10 different payment methods, authentication, and so on. So this has to be integrated, and this only will work if the different stakeholders work together already in the development phase, and not only once they put out the services and then trying to integrate everything. That's not going to work.
Thanks so much, Maria, for your availability to all these questions. Thank you for this precious insight about the public and private need for articulation, let us say. And I would also like to thank both Carmen and Pekka for adjusting to this slight change in our program, but this is what we do, try to adapt to change. Is that so? So Maria, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So I will stay on and try to listen as much as I can, and then I will just drop out when I need to. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And I will now leave the ground to Carmen. Carmen, thank you for being with us and for waiting for this adjustment. And you can start. I would kindly ask Maria to stop sharing the presentation so that Carmen can start. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm trying to do this now, Elsa, but
Okay, David. I
thought I already stopped sharing. But,
No. David, can you withdraw this presentation, please?
Yes, just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I start now?
Yes, please do, Carmen. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much. I'm glad to wait. It was wonderful to listen to the wonderful presentation of Maria and also the questions about it. It's great to talk about mobility and to discuss and to share with all our experiences. First of all, I wanted to start greeting all the speakers here, also those who are seeing us in a virtual way. I want to say you that I was wishing to receive you in person, you all here in Alentejo, but I really hope soon we can do that. So I'm going to share my presentation, and I hope. Are you all seeing already?
Yes, Carmen. Yes.
Okay. So, okay. Now we are. I'm going to present our mobility as a service project for Alentejo, and to say that Alentejo are really proud to be a partner of our oral project. First, starting by presenting Alentejo. Alentejo represents 1/3 of the total area of our country, of Portugal. It is a region with border features, it is a region of a sea coast, and also an interior region with a very low density and with a very aging population. Therefore, we are faced every day with a lot of challenge about governance. But it motivates us to work intensively in the development of our region. And we are proud to say that we are already in the top 10, in the European top 10 in several innovation indicators. So we are going to continue to work about this. But today in particular, I want to talk about the project of mobility as a service. We are implementing in a phased manner for all Alentejo. I have to mention that the importance of the Alentejo Green Deal. All the region Green Deal strategies allow us to work in all these areas, and we can promote the mobilization for research and innovation, and it is a very good experience. Well, due to the characteristics I have already mentioned of low density and an aging population, when we talk about mobility, we are talking about guaranteeing access and mobility for everyone, regardless of their physical and financial limitations. For a region where the geographic dimension is considerable, public transport needs to be complemented with a solution that optimizes resources and routes and distance. So, our project will happen in 2 phases. We are working since last year in the pilot phases. We are working with 5 regional municipalities, and we are adapting a similar project already working in Portugal, in another region, but we are working in intending to move forward for this solution already implemented. So these 5 municipalities are working in this first phase. And for the next phase, we want to evaluate to a mobility as a service. Now we are working as an on-demand adaptive transport. We have a platform that can optimize all the routes, all the demand, and then we are working now with only taxis, but we intend to accommodate all the solutions in all the transports, all modes of transport. So important to say, all the trips, they only happened if they have a request. We have a web platform, and because we have age people, they do the requests using a phone. They only undertake routes in the service if they have been requested, so the travel will happen. It's important to say that we are not, we are complementing the offer of transport, of public transport in the region. We are serving places that have that don't have any public transport, or where they have more need and more demand to be served. As I just saying that our platform will allow us to collect a lot of information, all the information about mobility needs. And we intend to use this information to the evaluation of the project. So the first results, and also the results that we have with the similar project that we are adapting, we know that we have very good acceptance from the public. And it is when it starts with a few persons taking the first experience, and then people are going to say about the other people, they share their experience, and then in a small time they also much people are using. It is a very good solution. It's important to say also that we are collecting data about the health services, because we intend that all the trips can serve the health needs in the hospitals and in the centers, in the health centers, and also working with some needs about special about the social needs, and some institutions that they also anytime they can collect with the municipality, and they say the needs, and anytime they can say, well, we need another stop, we need another route, and we can adapt the platform to this optimization. As I said, now we are working with the phone calls, but we intend to evaluate to an app for the phone, and a smart application, also to do the reservations in the site online. So we are integrating all the public and private actors in mobility. Now we are, because these health needs and the transportation for health needs, it's important to create new legal possibilities. So we are already working on that. The municipalities for the second phase are already working with us. We don't we are using the experience for the first 5 to start working for the second phase that we intend to create the project next year and to put it in working. So our priorities for EIT Urban Mobility KIC. We intend to work with all the policies and all our political intentions for the region. We have small cities, but a huge rural area. And it's important to work this all together. And we went first of all to create livable urban places and to connect all urban places. Sometimes these distances are huge, but we need to allow that people can go from one place to another, and we have several possibilities to do that, and it intends that it can be easy to do. Also with the decarbonization objectives. So anytime we want to associate electrical vehicles, also the possibility for hydrogen, and we are working also in that. So as a second, I'm going to talk, and I'm not sharing, I'm not following all the presentation. So second priority to close the knowledge gap. We are creating the technology, we are putting the technology working, but we intend to create formations and to put several people working on it to promote skills, also to be possible to put this project in all region, and also to go forward for the rest of the country if possible. So deploy green, the third one, deploy green, safe, inclusive mobility solutions. When people start to experience new solutions, if they are really good and if they can feel safe, if they can feel affordable, if they have, and if they feel that is also the possibility to take everybody, people like that, and then they start using. We are already feeling that. The fourth, to accelerate market opportunities, so contribute to create the enabling conditions to boost Europeans' urban mobility sectors. We need to share this experience because we want to adapt another solutions, but also to share our solutions and to be competitive in a global scale. The last one, to promote effective policies and behavioral change. So increases the social acceptance and citizen awareness of sustainable mobility solutions and creating a regulatory environment that allow those solutions to be competitive. In fact, I think that when we can achieve the objective of getting the whole region, because of this the several characteristics and so different characteristics in a in our region, we can, we are in that time, we have the possibility to put these similar projects in any place, not only in Portugal, but I think in any region similar with Alentejo, with low density characteristics. We are glad to listen to your experiences and so please put your questions to share with us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Carmen, for your presentation. I would suggest now to have Pekka's presentation, and then we'll keep all the questions to the end of this table. So I kindly ask the audience to keep the questions until the end, and I will now invite Pekka to deliver his presentation. Perhaps I would also ask David to take this presentation off. Okay, Pekka, you are good to go now.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Elsa. I'm just now trying to share the screen. Let's see how it works out. Oh, like this. Does it show?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. And I'm turning the slideshow on, and now it shows again, right? Correctly. Okay, thank you. A few words from my side about smart rural mobility in a smart rural community. I'm not sure how much rural word is emphasized in my presentation, because a lot of the problems that we see with smart mobility, they actually shared with between rural and urban areas. So in some respects, they are not that different from each other. And in some other respects, they are very different from each other. That's how life is. It's complex. Okay. What I'm going to say here now is I have a few things about how should we perceive smart mobility for people and goods. And everything I say applies to people and goods unless otherwise noted. And it also incorporates all the transport modes. So I'm not exclusively looking at land transport or some other mode of transport. I have a couple of observations from a systemic and policy perspective that I thought that could be interesting, and they sort of continued the storyline when I was building up the presentation. And then I'm going to just mention an interesting auroral pilot that is carried out by our Norwegian colleagues, who are, by the way, I think, rapporteurs in this session. So smart mobility, it means different things for different people. Maria was saying in her presentation that she was not sure whether biking or cycling is a smart mobility. And in my world, it's definitely one of the smartest things you can do in transport. But this just shows that you know, these perspectives are different. So everybody has their own view, and it's not, you know, wrong to have your own view. It's just wrong not to recognize that there are also other views. So let's remember that when we speak about smart mobility, probably people mean a little bit different things depending where they come from and what's their background. Our Auroral project is about pilots, and one of the tasks we have in our own Auroral project in Finland is to gather information about the existing pilots. And here you can see the list of pilots, trials, and demonstrations in our country that are ongoing, or they are very recent ones. And I counted something like 60 or 70 pieces of them in this list. And this is probably not an exhaustive list. So my guesstimate would be that in Finland, we probably are having something like well over 100 smart mobility pilots, demonstrations, trials, or research projects that have some sort of living lab experiment or whatever. So it's actually quite interesting. So there's not really, we're doing a lot of things, not just few things, but so many things, and it's impossible, in fact, to keep track that what is happening in the country, even in a small country like Finland. I can only imagine what happens in Germany, so it's probably a much more complex picture. But if you look at the list of all these efforts that we are having, you see some.
Sorry, Pekka, to interrupt. I think there's some problem with the way you are showing, because we are now just seeing your notes. So I kindly ask you to try to put it in another way, like in slideshow or something, because now we have your slide and the notes. Okay, so perhaps you can put it in full screen. Yeah, full screen or something like, try that one.
Let me just.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Screen 2. I wonder if this is it.
Still, yeah, just like that. Perfect. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much.
For letting me know.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, not a big problem though, luckily. So, okay, here's the switching of the slides. Let me get back. So there are some common themes when we look at this long list of different efforts. We see mobility as a service. This is one of the things that we Finns take a lot of pride, because we think that MaaS was invented in Finland. And this is partly true. Not sure if it's exactly the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but it's definitely part of the truth. And I think the first really serious MaaS company, MaaS Global, was established in Finland. And I actually happen to know that founder quite well. So we used to work in past projects. Demand response to public transport is also one of those themes. Shared electric mobility, as Maria was showing in her slides, coming very fast in Finland, although we lag behind in the electrification when we are compared, for example, with Norway. Well, Norway is leading in the Europe, but even compared to Sweden, Denmark, we are a bit behind. Probably because we are furthest up in the north, and people have quite serious doubts about electrical vehicles in very cold circumstances. And we do have a lot of cold, very low temperatures in the wintertime. Social services transports, this is something that eats a lot of the public budgets of the municipalities and cities. So different types of transportation services for the elderly or for the school children, and then tourism travel services as part of the travel packages that the travel agencies or big tour organizers are selling. One of the things that smart mobility definitely, in my opinion, is it's probably about moving less. There's a little bit of a question mark there that is it so? I happen to think that it is so. So we need to reduce our consumption of resources, and that means less mobility, less transportation than what we have today. Definitely it means different type of transportation. And a lot of good things have happened when we have had the pandemic, although there are probably more of the bad things, but good things have been that we have actually seen a reduction in the negative externalities. So in the CO2 emissions in our country, they were quite radical when people worked from their office instead of going to work and coming back in the morning and in the evening. We have seen air quality improved, which means that there's going to be less health impacts coming from transport, and the safety statistics have improved as well, just because of less traffic on the roads. Overall, the resource consumption has been reduced, and that means that, of course, there are some cost savings that we can see, especially in the private economy side. But on the other hand, transportation is an industry of its own. And whenever we are having less transport, it means macroeconomic impact. the macroeconomy is having less output when there's less transportation. That's a definite fact, and that means employment effects. And we mustn't forget about all these positive externalities that come from transportation. Just, connecting people physically, or getting the goods transported to a right place in the right time. So this is also something that we lose then. But if we are to pursue less transportation, then what we need to do, we need to substitute some of the mobility, physical mobility, and that means, for most part, it means digital connectivity. And this is, of course, something of a possibility for rural areas. But there are also the problems what we have with mobility. So who is actually investing in rural areas in digital connectivity? And this, I'm sure it's a big issue in Portugal. It's a big issue in Finland. It's a big issue all over the place. So no matter where you go, the same debate is ongoing. And I'm not sure whether we are having the right answers yet in place. And the other thing is that so we have built our world in a way that we are part of global supply chains. The food you eat and the products you consume, they are coming from China or some other parts of the world. And this trend has been building up for the last, 50 years or so. It's very, very hard to break this trend of globalization. But if we are to have less transportation, we need to break these big supply chain architectures and create close smaller loops and localize the market structures and do different things that has to do with the market more than they actually have to do with the transportation in a technical sense. And this, I think, is one of the big challenges we are having. Who is investing? Let's go back to the investments in the digital architecture, whether it's fiber optics or 5G or even 6G networks. We are talking in my university 6G networks, and we have quite a big funding to do 6G research. I just hope the transportation people also get to do that research and not just the tech guys, as far as it has been for now. But nevertheless, here is an analysis we did a few years ago, and we presented this in Singapore Intelligent Transport System World Conference in 2019. And it has two countries, Australia and Finland. Australia, because when we were doing the analysis, I was living in Australia in those times. And then Australia is in red dots, and Finnish industries are in blue dots. And we have different industries based on the national accounting system. And on the horizontal axis, you see investments in digitalization, meaning networks, software, hardware, communication appliances, etc. Those kind of assets. Investments in those kind of assets relative to the business size as a percentage. And the business size is measured as gross value added. It's a bit different than turnover, but nevertheless, it shows you that how big the business is, more or less. And on the vertical axis, you see prioritization of investments in digitalization. So all the investments made by a certain industry and what's the percentage that is used for digital investments. And you can see that transport, postal and warehousing, which we talk about, transportation industry, it doesn't really cover the whole transportation industry as we understand it, but it covers it reasonably well. So it's actually quite modest percentages we are getting. And the top investor as an industry is always, in most countries, the financial and insurance services. And the most recent figure from Finland is that 70% of all the investments of the banking sector is done in digitalization. Not in buildings, not in walls, but in digitalization. It's a huge amount of money, And this is what's happening. And what is interesting when we look at this statistics and then we look at the very, very recent statistics is that the difference between the top digitalizers and then the low digitalizers is actually growing. So those industries that invested less in digitalization, they are doing even more or less relative to those top investors, like information media and telecommunications industry and financial and insurance services. So investments from the private sector, from the industry sides in digitalization, in transportations are not too impressive in the end. And by the way, if we look at the automotive industry, which belongs to the manufacturing industries, manufacturing is not that much better either. It's not shown here in the picture. I can't remember which dot it is, but it's somewhere there, in the lower part, lower left-hand corner. Let's go back to the long list of pilots we had in Finland, and we can identify still that we are talking about the same problems. And I've been working with intelligent transport systems more or less actively for 20-25 years, and we still are having the same debates. So it means that things are progressing slowly. They are, and big changes are happening, but it's always slower than what we think in the beginning. There's a lack of sustainable business cases. This was something that Maria was also bringing up. We're still talking about interoperability of systems. So after 20 years of debate and trying in different projects, we finally have a more or less national ticketing system for public transport in Finland. It's a very huge step and a big progress, but it took 20 years. We have the same problems with personal identification, scheduling, and so forth. We are still missing those kind of actors that we can call integrators, those who are able to package things together, whether it's a travel chain or whether it's something else. But we don't have these new type of businesses. It means that the existing actors need to expand their businesses into new areas, or we have to find altogether new players. Both things are happening, but it's not a quick change, but it's going to be a big change. Governing and administration regulations, we have, for example, examples from the Uber taxi side when it comes to working regulations and labor trade union policies and those kind of things. And we have encountered this problem too in Finland, for example, when it comes to licensing to those companies and people who can transport persons. Market structures and organizations are still very rigid, and we always have the big players versus the new entrants, and the question that who is actually collaborating with whom. And for example, typically local partners seem to be collaborating together, and it's hard to break those kind of cycles, and it's not necessarily a good thing to break those. But what is important to note is that the technology in itself is not the problem. We always find the technological solutions. And rural and urban areas share these above mentioned problems, more or less. They have the same problems. But on the other hand, let's go back to rural and urban division. They are also different, these areas. And I'm raising a question here that is there room for a common rural transport policy? Might be the case. Hopefully, Auroral will find some answers to that. But this is a simplification of the statistics coming from Eurostat. And when you look at and dig into the statistics, you see that there are two groups of countries, the low-income countries and then the high-income countries. And that's basically the horizontal axis. And then you have motorization levels, so how many registered vehicles you have per 1,000 population relative to country average. And you see that actually in low-income countries, the rural area motorization is low, whereas the urban area motorization is high. and in the high income countries, it's vice versa. And it means, of course, that well, in the rich countries, you are able to build, better public transport systems. And in general, urban transportation is more expensive because you have to pay for parking, you have to pay for space, and all that stuff, which is more expensive in the high income country and in big cities in general. But it's an interesting dualistic thing that we are seeing here, that the rural and urban, they are not the same. And it's going to be interesting to see that what are the other differences between these areas. Finally, this is my last slide. I just want to jump into more practical things from the theoretical discussion. That this is the pilot we're going to do in the Aurora project by our Norwegian colleagues. It's a drone pilot. It's about medical logistics, handling logistics from the mainland to a remote island or some other remote part of the country. And in Norway, they have plenty of islands and plenty of difficult transportation circumstances. And it might be a good thing, a good idea to also have this option, especially in case of emergencies or critical situation where you need to supply medical supplies very, very quickly to some distance. And interestingly, this drone carrying medical supplies has all the necessary elements of a classical logistic problem. We are talking about physical flows, making it reliable, safe, and in time. We also are speaking about the information flow. It has to be in time, but there's a lot of sensitive information. I mean, who is using the drug, who is authorized to deal with the drugs in general, and how do we do authorized party identification? So whoever picks the drug delivery is actually authorized to do so. And then there's the money flow question: who gets paid for what and how? I mean, it's easy to organize a pilot when you have money to do that, but making a permanent business is an entirely different thing. But we are trying, of course, to find solutions for that. And then there's the regulations side, operating licenses, drug administration, and things like that. So all these nice elements of classical logistics problems are there in this pilot. And we are looking forward to working with this pilot with our Norwegian colleagues, Fleming and Asbjørn, for example. That's it from my side. I hope I didn't take too much time, and there's still some time for a panel discussion.
Thank you so much, Pekka. You surely allowed enough space for questions. Thank you for your interesting presentation. I must say I'm passionate about the practical implementations, and so it was. I think it was quite interesting for everyone to take a look at the Norwegian pilot. And so now I am going to open the formal question and answer session, and so I invite everyone who wants to debate some specific aspect. I can see here that I have an observation from Fleming saying that the Norwegian pilot also refers to interesting KPIs related to response time, quality of service, sustainability, and so on. I don't know if Fleming, you want to further discuss some of these points? If so,
Yes, I am here. Yes, I can mention a few things about it here. First and foremost here, Pekka, I think you did an excellent job here in presenting some of the issues related to mobility and some of the challenges that you are facing here. When it comes to the Norwegian pilot here, since that was an actual question here, then you can say that in rural communities, you are facing a number of issues that is unique to them. For instance, the Arctic, which we are going to focus on here, you can say that we are not only talking about sparsely populated, but very sparsely populated areas. And that means that if you, for instance, have situations that occur on an island, a remote island, if you have situations where you are locked in because you have landslides or you have avalanches taking place here, then you do not have much time really to plan ahead and let's say, handling all the necessary resources that are necessary to act. You have this response time that you need to reduce, and it needs also to reach out to the people that is necessary, and you also need to ensure that the right people get the right kind of services. And you also see that we have a number of different kinds of business models on top of that. So Pekka, one of the things that you brought up here was exactly what kind of new services will you find? What kind of new technologies and what kind of new work tasks can be put upon that? So these are some of the things that the Norwegian pilot is addressing. Thank you.
So let me just repeat the question. It was addressed to me, I think. What type of new technologies, new work, what else was there?
Excuse me, was that a question for me, Pekka?
Yeah, I was. Did you ask a question? You did. Okay, I'm not sure whether it was a question or just,
No, I don't. On the question.
Okay, well, right. Sorry, my misunderstanding. Sorry.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to the audience. Some questions either for Pekka and for Carmen. I don't know if people are shy or just waiting for lunch. On my side, I would like to address a question. I think it can be to both our speakers, because I think Maria is no longer with us in this discussion, of course. And my question was about the data that are related to mobility. So in your specific situation, in your different countries and regions, and of course in a regional approach, who might provide the data that are related to mobility and that will allow the setting up of feasible smart mobility concepts? Who is in charge of this data?
So do you want Carmen to start or shall I?
Okay. Well, for this project I presented in particular, the platform we have created will allow us to collect all the data. All this data intends us to be used when we want to accommodate all the other modes of transport, bicycles, the buses, but the information about the public transport, well, we have with the company, and in Alentejo, we have only one company, so it is easy for us. Also for the project to complement the offer that this company allows in the territory, so it is easy for us. But for the future, when we have the information, we have to respect all the legal restraints about the people, also all the importation about who is using the service, but the numbers about how people are using from where and to and the reason why they are traveling, yes, we can use that, and we intend to use that information for the evaluation of the project.
Thank you, Carmen.
So, well, if we're speaking about who owns the data and who has the data in general, I mean, we have two agencies that are in a critical position, at least. There are more than two, but the two are very critical. We have Traffic and Communications Agency. They have basically all the information on registered vehicles, their inspections, and who owns them, and you know, all that stuff that is needed to identify a vehicle and the owner of the vehicle. That's in their possession, and they are already selling it on a basis of contracts. So they are providing access for private companies to make use of that information, as long as it's anonymized in a decent way. And they let some companies have it, and then they get some money in return. And this is a policy that has been somehow criticized many times. But so far, it's been mainly used for marketing purposes, so that you get a reminder every year that it's time for your car inspection, and we have a good offer for you. So those kind of things. I'm not sure whether how useful that is in the end for mobility services. The infrastructure information is with the Traffic Infrastructure Agency, and basically most of the road network is digitalized, and they provide access to that data. But you need to be able to have it, and you need to get some sort of permission to use all that data. And I'm not quite sure that how much they've limited the data as public data, open government data, and how much is then more or less confidential. Some information, for example, regarding bridges or tunnels and these security critical infrastructures, they probably are still secrets. So they're not giving it away to anybody. So those are the two main agencies. And there's a general policy on open government data. So you are able to build different types of services based on that data. And then there's the location data and geographical data that is owned by another state-owned company. And the name has been changed so many times that I don't even recollect the actual name of that company. But basically, they are also building, I would say, semi-commercial business out of that data. So it's not entirely free. It's to some extent it is free, but not entirely. So it's difficult to say whether you are able to build a good business based on this type of data or not. And then we have the operators data and different business actors data, and that's all closed. It's never disclosed to anybody. So far, we have been very, very even the state-owned railways, they don't give their passenger data out because they say that it's a business secret.
Okay, thank you so much for your overview. And I have now here some questions that I will try to put because they are in the forum. I have here one question that says, how are new smart mobility foreseen after Corona, with less people traveling and increased distance inside the transport mode? So I will leave to anyone who wants to pick this question and make some remarks on it.
Well, I can start if that's okay for you, Carmen. We recently had some sort of a live debate about the next generation public transportation. And I was sort of left alone in that debate because I was saying that this pandemic has introduced the greatest crisis ever when we think about public transport. So I'm not quite sure whether it's able to recover in full. And we also have to remember that this might be not the last buck coming in. So there might be several other pandemics that are coming up, and we will have again the same situation. And then I'm thinking about the fact that all public transport is subsidized by the state and by the municipalities and cities. And combining this need for subsidy and this vulnerability, and especially the crisis they've encountered, and thinking about all the budget difficulties we are going to have after the COVID has been responded and it's over. I'm not sure whether public transport is going to get the money they need to build it on the next level. I hope that they will, but I have my doubts.
Do you want to comment also, Carmen?
Yes, in fact, COVID is the reason why we have several delays in our first phase of our project, because at first one taxi can take 4 people. Now they can take only 2. So all the platform was adapted, needed to adapt to the constraints of this limitation. Also to the optimization about the number of taxis that need to be out for the same travel, and it was not easy. So we have several delays about that. But for the other hand is that even older people are now more available to use new technologies. So I think now we have more people that will use a smartphone to do a reservation, and it's easy to tell people, now you need to use a smartphone to this reservation. Now they are more, even the older people, they are more available to use these new technologies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Carmen. And I guess we are almost coming to an end. And so I have here what I think it is a very challenging question, and it's directed at you, Pekka. Some problems in urban and rural areas are similar, so they are more or less the same. So can you further elaborate on the solutions?
Well, let me say that I think I always think that this work in about a smart region is especially to create a smart region, especially the same about to create a smart city. But the difference is about the distance and the number of people traveling from one part to another. Also, some needs are different, of course, but when we intend to apply these new politics about smartization and about new technologies, they in fact they are really similar. It's about the difference in scales. In the cities, we need to put things in a smaller distance, but the same things. Maybe with the range about people is very different. But when we intend to put in practice the solutions, in fact, it's very similar.
Thank you, Carmen. Can we have a comment from you, Pekka?
Yes, thank you. It's okay. A tough question. The solutions, of course, we know the solutions after our rural project. That is for sure. But one of the solutions, because this business case problem seems to be always there. More, it's you can't avoid it. So maybe some sort of social enterprising or cooperatives of some sort of sharing economy could be some kind of solution there. And doesn't mean just vehicles. It can mean many other things too. I mean, just taking your errands to your neighbor, and he's taking care of it, and there's some sort of trade-off between he's serving you and you compensate it in some way. But this requires some attitude changes of the people. And then, I mean, I was referring to those global supply chains and saying that one of the answers is that we need to break this sort of, I'm not completely break, but we need to step away a little bit from this globalization trend and start to favor local products, local services. And that's, again, it's a question about attitudes. And then it's a question about pricing of transport. I mean, you have to tax transportation as you do anything else that causes some externalities. And you have to tax them correctly. So these are some of the answers that are there. But there's no single, there's no silver bullet kind of thing. It's a million small things altogether.
Thank you, Pekka.
And just when we are talking about mobility, I think the one big issue is to use electrical mobility, the use of new energies. It will be a great difference because of decarbonization, because of the number of vehicles. And when we are talking about cities especially, it will be the great evaluation for the mobility issues. I think is the great difference, and the mobility really needs to be different, to be electrical, also the hydrogen, but also the possibility to put people using the bicycles in their trips to work, from work to house, and the use of bicycles. I think it will be a great difference also. If we have electrical bicycles, we can do much more kilometers in each trip. So, and we don't we arrive without being so tired of that trip. So when people start experiencing the use of electrical bikes, it's easier to change from the car to the bicycle. It can even for great trips, and when we are talking about rural regions, sometimes if people feel safe to use the rural way, they start to use. I think it will be easy to convince people to do that. But we need to put this in schools when we are younger. We are more available to experience different ways to go. So, and when we have our sons and grandsons using, first we use because in the weekends to as something to try only in the weekend, but then we start using for work. It's time to time, day after day.
Yeah,
it's a great answer. Can I supplement here just to
yes, of course.
Example? I live in a remote area with my wife because our children already left the nest, and we are 20 kilometers or 25 kilometers from the city. And she uses electric bike in the summertime. So half the year it's electric biking. And we noticed the difference when she started to cycle to work, and I still continue to work at home. So instead of fueling our car every week, we do it now once a month in the summertime. So it's a great reduction. A good example, by the way.
Yeah, and I must fully agree with you, Pekka, when you say that, well, this is also and mainly a behavioral change, because technology is there, but the behavior must change. So, and I would say that now we could go to our last question that I have here in the chat. And it says, how relevant is digital twin technology for smart mobility?
Well, I would say it's not really the top priority issue, but I guess it can be of help, because when you are somehow redesigning your mobility system or your urban areas, especially the urban areas, you don't really need digital twins in rural areas, not to that extent at least. But if you are planning different things in an urban area, urban context, you are able to do simulations before you actually build any additional infrastructure, or you build up additional services or new services. So I think it's a handy tool. But the question was how important? Well, medium important.
Yes, I agree. It will be, it can be very useful, especially to collect data and to use data. When we have good data, we can define better in the future for the next policies. So, but in fact, it's not a priority.
Okay, I also have a comment here on the chat, not a question, but a comment on this topic. It may be an aspect of contingency plans for rural communities. So that leads us to the end of this session. I don't know if there are any further comments from our audience, and if not, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers, our wonderful rapporteurs, and our wonderful audience. We made it on time. We are 3 minutes ahead of time, and we are in lunchtime. So it's particularly important for this. Thank you so much. On my side, I learned a lot about smart mobility, so I'm so happy with this. And I hope that you can proceed with us in this summit that is going to last all week long, with several tables and several topics that are really meaningful for our smart communities topic. So thank you so much, and see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.